You're listening to JS Party, a weekly celebration of JavaScript and the web. Our 300th episode is right around the corner. Help us make it extra special and earn a free t-shirt along the way. Learn how at jsparty.fm/300. Once again, that's jsparty.fm/300. Special thanks to our partners, Fastly.com, Fly.io, and Typesense.org. Okay, hey, it's party time, y'all.
What's up, friends? I'm here with James Cowling, co-founder and CTO at Convex. They're one of our new sponsors, and they're building a full-stack platform for the TypeScript era. So, James, you have some awesome docs for Convex, and inside those docs is a document that sort of describes the entire world, the entire thinking, the framework of Convex. It's called the Zen of Convex. Can you describe that for me?
From my time building large-scale applications, I believe very strongly that there are a certain set of abstractions, primitives, and ways of solving problems that make life easy forever, and they compound in positive ways, and ways to solve problems that make life worse every day. And the things, everyone can recognize these things. What makes life easy is clean abstractions, information hiding, composability. What makes life hard is conditionals, checks everywhere, corner cases. Now, the Zen of Convex is about how to build applications in a way that scales for you. And in Convex specifically, one key component of that is influenced actually quite a lot by languages like Haskell. To think in terms of transactions, everything is a transaction. You don't have to think about functions interacting with each other because they're transactional. Think in terms of deterministic execution, so functions that are deterministic, so they can get replayed, they can get cached, and if any of the inputs to that function changes, we can push those functions in real time, the new results of those functions to you in real time over a WebSocket. So the Zen of Convex is about thinking about the kind of ways of building an application that are going to pay dividends to you in the long run. Now, you can use Convex and completely ignore the Zen if you want, right? You can use Convex just as a workhorse tool. We think the framework's designed in such a way that it encourages you to do things in the right way and in a way that will scale, in a way that will make life simple for you in the long run.
Okay, if you're looking for a better type of backend, Convex is the full-stack TypeScript development platform you've been looking for. Replace your database, server functions, and glue code. Get started at convex.dev. That's convex.dev. Again, convex.dev.
Hello, everyone. It's me, your host, Amal Hussein. This is JS Party, a weekly celebration of JavaScript and the web. And we're back today with, I guess, what is like, I would consider maybe a semi-emergency pod. Semi-emergency because, this was all scheduled in the last few days. We bumped up our schedule again to kind of squeeze this discussion in, but I'm so excited to be able to have this discussion on air. With me for today's show is KBall. Hello, welcome KBall. It's been a minute.
It has. Well, I got a new job and there's conflicts and stuff, but I'm excited to be back on the show.
I know. It's so funny. Like the last show that I think I was on with you, we were talking about our careers, and then you're like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about starting. I'm thinking about like doing something new." And then the next conversation I had with you, like 2 weeks later, you were like, "I started something new." So congrats, yay! Very excited for you. And Chris, hello, Chris.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, it's really early for Chris, everyone. So send Chris some good vibes for him to survive this early morning recording. And we're recording very early because we have some amazing guests from Europe. Matteo Collina. Hello, Matteo.
Hello. Thank you very, very much for recording early for the early wake up to everybody. Sorry about this.
Don't feel bad. It's 9:15 a.m.
on the West Coast. I mean, I've had lunch, just to be clear.
It's like it's not even early. It's just me.
Okay. No worries. We know we all love you.
Our resident grouch. Am I allowed to say that? That's not bullying, right? That's not mean, I hope. So, and James Snell, welcome. Hello, James.
Hello.
Hello. Is this your first time on JS Party, James? Because Mateo's like a regular. This is like his fourth show.
I think this is my first time. I've kind of lost track over the a while, but yeah, I think it is. I think it might be.
And so we've invited James and Matteo today, who both of them are members of the Node.js Technical Steering Committee. They're both core contributors to Node, been with the project for a very long time, both contribute to the open source ecosystem as a whole, both incredible people. And we've invited them here today to have a very important discussion, a very nuanced discussion on kind of the rhetoric that we're seeing in the community regarding, Node versus Bun, Node versus dnode, just kind of comparing Node to other runtimes. There's a lot to kind of talk about in today's show, but we really hope to kind of really set the tone for why some of these comparisons they're not even fair comparisons, or they're not necessarily like the best comparisons to be making, but also just anyways, lots to unpack. So before we get started with the show, Matteo, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for people who don't know you?
Of course, Amal, you don't know me, so let me introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I am Matteo Collina, member of the, actually vice chair of the Node.js Technical Steering Committee. Such a phenomenal title.
I didn't know there was layers to this thing.
No, there are. It's the ones that takes the minutes and writes the minutes out.
Okay.
So that's what the chair and the vice chair do. Essentially, they prepare the minutes and they push the minutes, and then they host YouTube sessions. So that's the role. So that's why I got the spot. Then a board member of the OpenJS Foundation. Then co-founder and CTO of a company called Platformatic. We are actually doing 1.0 on next Tuesday, 26th of September. So please tune in to our stuff. And I don't know, my software runs on your computer. So I don't know, treat me well. This is pretty much the byline. I have, 22 billion downloads per year or something like that on NPM. If the download analytics works. So something around that. So it's my software runs on your computer type of situation.
Yeah. We got it. You are the whatever. I was going to say a word that was going to get bleeped out, so I won't say it. But yes, you're awesome. Yes, bleep, exactly. Bleep. So James, what about you? This is your first time, so you have to give us an extended intro. And also tell us how you ended up in Ireland, because that's where you're based.
No, I'm not in Ireland.
Wait, you're not in Ireland?
I'm in California.
What the hell? Why did I think that you were in Ireland? This is so strange.
Because I used to work with Nearform. I used to work with Nearform, which is based out of Ireland, right? And I think that's where we met, was probably one of the NodeConf views or something like that. So
yes, this makes
sense. A lot of folks have thought of
that you live in Ireland.
I'm in Ireland, but nah, I'm in California.
Cool.
I'm all the way out here. Yeah, I've been involved with Node since like 2015. Contributed all kinds of stuff, similar to Matteo, stuff I write on your computer, like, all of like the URL parser and HTTP2 and, a whole bunch of things have been added to Node since 2015. And, I'm largely responsible for. I like to, the way I put it is I'll add the bugs and then encourage other people to get involved with the project to fix them, which has been quite successful over the years. Today I'm working on not just Node, but I'm at Cloudflare. I work on the workers runtime itself and also the open source kind of kernel of that called workerd. So, between Node and workers, I touch a lot of the stuff that folks use. So
yeah. And so, before we kind of get into the meat of this like Node versus X kind of comparison, I would love to kind of set some context for folks just around what is Node and how is Node governed and like, just the whole, like the machinery, I think it's fairly sustainable to some degree, right? In the sense that there's like getting into the top 100 contributor list for Node is like not easy. There's a lot of people contributing. So can you just tell us a little bit about like, how's the project structured? How's it governed?
The structure of it, it's pretty straightforward. You have the foundation, which is kind of like the legal home for the project. Like the foundation holds the Node brand. They provide and just kind of backing support for legal and marketing and those kinds of things. But day to day, the technical ownership of the project, kind of what happens in the project itself, is governed 100% by the contributors to it. And there is a technical steering committee, and those are made up of kind of like the kind of the longest term, kind of most trusted contributors. But it technically has kind of like the final say on things, but only if the other contributors can't agree. So if somebody wants to make a change to something and other people will come up and say, no, we don't think that should be done, and there's a disagreement that can't be just resolved naturally through conversation, then the technical steering committee will come in and say, okay, well, we've looked at it and here's what we think and here's the decision. But day to day, it's the contributors that make the decisions, what happens in the project. I've tweeted about this. There's no roadmap. So you can't go to a product manager for Node and say, hey, what are you going to deliver next quarter? We don't know, right? It's whatever the contributors decide that they want to work on, what they want to add. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, Matteo, do you have any?
There is something that I want to say on this topic. So there is a really important thing on the governance that can be fixed. That is important. That we don't need to forget. Okay. The governance of the project, it's set up so that no company whatsoever can own the project. Okay, there is no style takeover. It's not possible by the bylaws of the project. So right now on the Node.js Technical Steering Committee, only 1/3 of those seats can be of one specific company. This means that if the company that cannot essentially take over the roadmap of Node without considering the rest of the community, which it's great from my point of view.
And this is critically important. So I've had people raise the fact it's like, oh, IBM used to pay you to contribute to Node. Isn't that like taking over? It's like, well, no. When I was at IBM and I got involved with Node, we very consciously made a decision. At that time, I was kind of I was the technical lead for all things Node within IBM. So I was kind of the gatekeeper. And when it started coming in where IBM wanted to get involved in the project and started contributing, we had folks within IBM saying, hey, I want to get involved with that. And I was like, no, wait, we don't want to overwhelm the project. We don't want to bring too many people into it. And like, we want to take a very careful and cautious approach to getting involved with the project so that it doesn't just go from one company, one corporate master to another corporate master. And then we end up with the same issues. It's very, very intentionally just like, hold off. We're only going to be doing things here that are for the benefit of the community. We're not going to come in to try to do a corporate takeover of the project. And, and that was critical at that time. I don't think Node would have survived if it just went from one corporate master to another. The guidelines that we put in place for, no, it's not going to be governed by one commercial interest. That was absolutely critical for the project to survive.
This is foreshadowing, people.
Yeah, it is. Well, and so that's like a very, I don't know, I feel like sometimes when you thank your ancestors for making good decisions kind of thing, where it's like, I thank whoever made those bylaws for having that kind of foresight, but I'm sure that came out of a need, right? So can you talk about that? Like there's some drama that kind of
well, yeah, I mean, it was IOJS
birthed those laws. Yeah. Matteo, this is a podcast, so you can't see Matteo's face where he's like, oh no, no way, drama in the JavaScript community, drama.
You have opened a can of worm, Amal. You don't know how big the can of worm you have opened.
Hold on, because I want to ask a question, right? Because we're talking about drama and we're doing a lot of talking around. Let's lay the stage a little bit, right? We're having this conversation because Bun recently launched was it 1.0 version of their runtime?
Yeah.
And there was all this kerfluffle and drama online. And oh my gosh, Node is dead. Why is Node not doing this? Why is Node not doing that? And first off, most programming languages have multiple runtimes, right? So thinking about Ruby, right? Nobody says, oh my gosh, Iron Ruby happened. MRI is dead. There's no use for it. Or JRuby happened. MRI, what is MRI doing? Right? There are multiple different runtimes that make different types of trade-offs because as we all know, engineering is fundamentally about trade-offs.
And use cases too. I mean, there's a need for secure JavaScript, which is why, for example, there's a new secure JavaScript runtime being worked on where it's like, how do we run JavaScript in the most secure way? Because we have some really specific needs that, this is going on firmware. And, so yeah,
Yeah, Workerd is an example, is a clear example of this. Workerd, it's still V8, still runs JavaScript, has a lot of the same APIs, completely, totally different runtime than Node or Dino or Bun and that kind of thing. And it's all relevant in this exact same space.
Yeah, and then I would say to double down on that, even there's multiple JavaScript engines. So even like depending on where you're using JavaScript, you're not even running the same engine, which is why it can even be bugs between engines and different behavioral issues, right? And I can tell you, from my time contributing to Test 262, which is the conformance suite for ECMA, the language, it's like literally like the library used to test JavaScript. You learn a lot of like the different nuances between engines. And I can tell you that like JavaScript Core, which is the engine in WebKit, which is also the engine that powers Bun, the engineers at Apple really, really, really prioritize performance. It's one of the reasons why they're also slower to implement features into the engine, because they really do things in a very performance conscious way. Because like nobody wants to explain to Steve Jobs like why the iPhone is a little slower, and so it's just for what it's worth, throwing that out there.
But I guess what I want to say is before we start going into the trade-offs and the choices that Node has made versus Bun versus whatever, like I want to get out there that this is a manufactured controversy. This is
let me state that, okay? Let me take over here, but and state that stuff, okay? Both James and myself and most of the Node, I would say all, but maybe somebody not, but I can just say all the Node.js technical steering committee and all the people in the project are very supportive and had always been very supportive with the effort that Jared is doing with Bun and the different trade-offs is happening, he has made, and everything he has done with the project, okay? To be honest, everybody here has been supporting with him, even explaining to him how certain APIs work or reporting bugs, incompatibilities, and things like that, okay? So everybody has been super supportive with the Bun, with the launch. The two projects are friends, okay? And to be honest, there was no jokes or, implied we will replace Node or we implied we will destroy Node assumption from the Bun team, okay? And overall, the Bun team has always said, we won't be here if Node was not here, okay? There was no time mistakes of Node here that's at that stage, okay? So I just wanted to clarify.
And I've seen some comments just, on Twitter and stuff like this where people are just like, oh, the Node folks are scared of Bun and they're, and all this kind of stuff. And just to be absolutely clear, no. Absolutely none of the drama that has been around this Node versus Bun thing, none of that drama can be attributed to anyone in Node or Bun. Right? So from those projects themselves, none of that drama can be attributed to them. Now, there have been people, there's been some back and forth, where Bun's like, hey, we're faster. And we've had some contributors like, well, maybe you're not faster than Node on this benchmark. We've had people like point out like little technical differences and there's that. But the drama that's kind of come from some of those conversations have not originated in the project itself.
The drama is all Twitter manufactured, okay? It's all hyped tech Twitter and comments on the Twitterverse and tech Twitter or tech X at this point, because I don't know who.
I mean, I feel like it's coming out of the people who've started saying like, or who are losing traction on their AI versions, right? Like there's all the AI tweets, this is dead, ChatGPT has destroyed it. And like, there have been a few of those, and that's like losing steam and energy online because it's turning out that, well, it's an advance in some areas and not in others. It's a real technology, not magic. And so now they're looking for some new controversy. Node is dead because Bun is faster on this thing. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is why I wanted to have this podcast discussion, because there's just the need to teach people like, hey, when you're making comparisons, understand what to compare, right? And yeah, there's obviously like, people don't understand like Bun couldn't exist without Node, like, literally, right? And so understanding that not only did people like, from the Node community directly or indirectly contribute to the shaping of Bun, but understand that like there's certain things that can happen in a new shiny runtime like Bun that can't happen in Node, right? For example, Node actually is like running and distributed on lots of machines, changing things drastically around like how cache is managed on packages or whatever, right? All these things have like huge ripple effects in the wild when you actually have like consumers, and like edge cases are not like edge cases, they're like actual bugs, And so I don't know. I don't even think it's a fair comparison even from that perspective. Like, how can you compare something that's like new to something that actually is in the wild serving customers, right?
Just to give you a hint of the sheer size of the Node project, okay?
Yeah.
Currently, Node.js is doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, quite a lot of different binaries that you can get from the website. Now, those binaries are actually, I think, about around 10 different binaries. I don't know exact number. I did stop counting. Those binaries are taken and then tested across all the combination of operating system and CPUs and so on and so forth, more or less with probably a matrix of maybe 50-something different environments, just to give you the hint of scale of... And Node runs equally on those, runs from your little tiny ARM Raspberry Pi to ARM, to Graviton systems on AWS, to Ampere system everywhere else, to M2s, which are different, unfortunately. Okay, sorry. Which are different to M1, M2s, Apple Silicon. It's still ARM, but it's just different, slightly different flavor of the binary. Then you have Ubuntu and Windows. Let's talk about Windows, folks, because this is a problem. Okay?
And it works on my machine, okay?
And it works, yeah, it works everywhere. So this is the gist. On top of that, there is the fact that Node does not break things, okay? Like Node tends to prefer to not break things, okay? Oh, thank God. I would love to make it faster by breaking half of it.
Similar to the web platform. Yeah, of course. You can't move as fast as you want to.
Yeah, I would love to break half of it, okay? It's literally half of it is, there's quite a good chunk of it that's legacy, okay? Now, if you're running an app in production and we ship a version of Node that thing cannot run anymore, okay? You're probably going to be bleep and throw beep at us, okay? It's
and it won't matter if it's 10 times faster. It doesn't run my code 10 times faster because it doesn't run my code anymore.
It doesn't run at all,
right.
Okay? That's that, and there are I don't know 2 million plus packages on npm, and breaking a good chunk of those, it's not on the table. So shipping big breaking changes and even, slightly breaking like we try not to as much as possible, especially on stuff that's been around for quite a long time.
Well, some of this is natural project life cycle, right? Like when you have an early project, you can make different choices. We saw this with Dino too. And then as you start to get more people actually using your thing and depending on it continuing to work, and maybe you move beyond the early adopter crew who's willing to deal with things breaking and having to fix it into somewhere mid-stage where people actually are depending on this to make money. And you have to make different stability guarantees and you have to make different compromises in terms of your choices. So like, once again, I'm coming back to like, this is like the same technology cycle that we have seen at least as long as I've been in the industry, which is 20 years at this point. There's not that much new here. What's new, if anything, is this pace of Twitter drama, but like actually that's not new either. I remember the the front end wars and all those things, and like just last week we had the emergency pod about TypeScript and no TypeScript.
It's just exponentiated now with all these YouTuber influencer people, so it's the same drama, just like it's just faster distribution, it's accelerated distribution.
I just want to point out a few things, okay? While Ban the project clearly documents is some of what it does and what it does not do, okay? The public announcement of the 1.0, the video and the press release and the comment that they've done massively overestimated the drop-in replacement for Node capabilities of Ban, okay? And I want to clearly point that out. This has been my statement all along, okay? It's not a drop-in replacement for Node. They aim to be a drop-in replacement for Node. It's not right now. It's even written in their docs. So I don't really understand why, for marketing reasons, they flipped a good message that is in the docs to something that's not true. that causes a lot of the drama and friction everywhere, okay? Because it's fine. You made different trade-offs. It's a different runtime. It's great, okay? Claiming it's a drop-in, it's basically claiming, oh, well, but this is not true. Okay, that's my whole point. It's not true.
Matteo, have you ever gone to like a startup's website and then you look at their address and it's like, oh, they have offices in New York and Stockholm and Boston and Chicago?
Oh, I know how that's done. I did it. So I set it up. I absolutely set it up and I did it. So we have a fantastic office in San Francisco.
So I mean, this is just par for the course. This is exactly what I would expect for any project. Like, why not? Like, I mean, what do they have to lose? Like, yeah, we're a drop-in replacement for Node. Like, trust us, wink, wink, I mean, this is just par for the course. But of course, like, the JavaScript community not being able to discern like things critically just means, people are like, what? I can just call,
Amal, that's my point, okay? As I said, I am as much as a maintainer of Node and a publisher, an author on NPM. And leading to the 1.0 release of Bun, there was a few PRs on my repo says, oh, it is the 2,000 lines PR to make it compatible with Bun. 2,000 lines of code changed to make it compatible with Bun.
Yeah.
Like, how is that? To be putting it clearly, it's not drop-in replacement, okay? It aims to be. It mostly quacks like Node. It's slightly different than Node in some of the most fundamental low-level things that, your code can work. Your code can also work, can not necessarily can work, or can have a sidetrack memory leaks that you don't know what's happening in there, okay? So production code.
So let's dig into those fundamental differences, right? Because you even stated on Twitter, and we'll like link to that tweet where you said that like, Jared has, pretty much been able to achieve these crazy performance improvements or performance achievements by being being performance obsessed, right? Like every little thing, like, how developers have those arguments sometimes where they're like, oh, don't use this thing to loop, use this thing, or like use this methodology, not that,
I've been there.
And it's like, really, you're going to have this argument in a pull request in a web app about like, what's the fastest looping? Like, no, like it's an optimization that's like not even going to be like processed by the human eye. And so, but Jared basically made every single one of those optimizations that he possibly could, right? Like all the little things, and you need to like have a granular understanding of how like heap management and memory management and all that stuff like works in order to like really take advantage. So can we talk a little bit about some of those? And I'm curious, like, which of those can be ported into Node land, right? Because the whole point of this beautiful game that is open source is, people throw out ideas and then someone else like takes your idea, your good idea, they remix it with their good ideas, and then they come up with something that's like an even better idea. And then that old idea then eventually like pull requests some of those new ideas back, and right. So everybody benefits. And so I'm curious, like, what's the game here with Node, and what will you do? What can't you do?
This is a very tough question. Okay, so he did certain things in Node are built with mostly a few different things. Like the priorities on the Node project are stability. Okay, make the runtime and everything traceable, inspectable, observable. Okay, so that you can find your bugs in production, you can track your things. You can solve production issues. I think a few of us in this call have been there and used all the advanced tooling, for example, the open tracing, OpenTelemetry, or other APM vendors, so that you can manage. And some of those has been in the news with massive bills recently on Twitter. So it's another emergency podcast if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Emergency. Drastically high APM bills. If you have watched those trends, has been. Quite a nice. It was a company that had a 50 million APM bill last year or something like that. A few years back, 50 mil. Sorry, just to clarify the fundamental problem. So yes, Node priority has all of those things which are production use case to support. Okay, and those things, having those hooks in, having those capabilities in the runtime, adds overhead. Okay, a few years back, there was quite a few heated pull requests, a lot of heat in those old issues, almost people throwing rocks at each other, because there was why you are doing all of that, slow things down massively and so on and so forth, explaining why. And basically, it's either that or we are not observable and traceable. And then good luck in solving your bugs in prod. So, the challenge is being observable and being able to do all those tracing things in production with no overhead. That's the phenomenal challenge, okay? But I don't think that they have those capabilities yet. I don't know. I will need to check. Okay, I'm not.
There's another side to that also, not just observability, but standards compliance. The URL parser in Node is kind of my canonical example of this. We had URL parse. We had it for years, and it was highly, highly optimized, very performant. But if you went and looked at that code, no one could understand it. There was like 2 people in the world that could understand that code. One of them was the person that wrote it, and the other person was the one that spent time going through and trying to fix bugs in it. And it was discovered that there were a number of security issues with it. There were a number of just kind of compliance issues, like the way that it parsed things didn't match the way the browsers did and everything else. But it was super, super fast, right? And it's still there. It still is super fast. And I looked at it and was like, we can't fix these security issues. We can't fix these bugs because anytime we touch it, we kill the performance of this thing and make it, 10 times slower. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to write a new URL parser, and it's going to be the one based on the standard, and it's going to be compliant to the standard. And for years, that was there, but it was slow. It was massively slower than the legacy URL parse. And we still had people in the community like, no, I'll never use that new URL thing because, we have URL parse and it works. All right. And for years, it was fun. And then, and then we had somebody finally come up and say, hey, this can be faster. And now we have Ada, which is a new implementation of the standard parser, which blows everything else out of the water in terms of performance, even the old URL parse. And it's still compliant to the spec. So it's like that mentality of, we're not going to start with performance. We're going to start with correctness and then make it perform. It's a different way of looking at the problem. Bun kind of like, we're going to start with performance and then make it standard as much as possible. We may have to compromise a little bit on standards. With Node, we've taken the opposite point of view, which is, no, if there's a standard, we're going to make it comply to the spec and then make it fast. And we've done that a number of times. So,
Matteo, I recall you mentioning something, I think probably on Twitter, about how performance, like people won't pay for performance, or can you speak to that a little more?
I was waiting for it. Okay. So first of all, I created a framework called Fastify, okay, which it's at this time thinks maybe 5 to 8 times faster than Express on Node.js and Bun. But Node.js with Fastify, and Node.js with Fastify in Bun, it's faster in Node than in Bun. But we both Jared and myself thinks there is a memory leak somewhere in Bun that Node is triggering. That Fastify is triggering. Fastify is pretty tied to Node API. So if there is some mishaps on how those are implemented, then things can go sideways. So, it is the problem, okay? And this is the fundamental gist. Node.js, it's, okay, the problem with performance, okay, is who is pushing right now a lot of investment in software development, open source, but also everything else? Cloud computing companies, okay? One way or another, we are all tied to Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, or GitHub, or whatever, okay? That are investing in some of our technologies and providing funds in various ways, okay? I'm not saying it's a direct thing, okay? But they have their own cloud products, okay? And they are pushing this down. Now, the surge of serverless and a lot of other pay by millisecond thing, pay by consume, has made absolutely damaging for those companies to invest even one dime in performance. Okay.
Oh, fascinating. Oh my God. I've never heard this take. I mean, duh, it makes sense. Yeah. It's like, we don't need your stuff to be slow. We don't need it to be fast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We are paying us for compute.
Well, you just pay for more resources. Okay. Look, I have even a hotter take than that.
Oh, please. Oh my God. This is all the hot takes.
It's the classic cost plus.
We are going, so AWS has gone so good length in trying to frame the narrative that to get more of your money, because Node.js is asynchronous, can run multiple requests at the same time with great speed, right?
Right.
So,
despite what people who write Ruby or Python might tell you.
So again, Ruby on Python runs one request at a time. Okay. And which is great. I love Ruby. I love Python.
Nobody's poo-pooing on those communities, but there's just a lot of poo-pooing on Node, which I don't like. So
yeah, you can do the same thing with those languages. By the way, you can run event-based computation on Ruby and Python. It doesn't matter. Okay, it's the same logic. Okay, so you have languages that are capable of running multiple requests, a lot of them actually, thousands, on the same process. Most of our apps literally take some data from a database and send it out. Okay, so when one database query is running, I can definitely send another one down the line because I'm not, my CPU and memory are basically idling there. Okay, now. So Node.js made a huge splash because it was asynchronous and it was able to handle thousands of concurrent requests from a single tiny node process. Even a tiny Raspberry Pi can run hundreds of concurrent requests on most things, okay? Now, AWS convinced everybody that running more than one request at a time per process was wrong. And, they have you pay per second even when that CPU is idle. This is AWS Lambda. So if you use AWS Lambda, you're paying even if your CPU is literally doing nothing. And everybody is believing in this massive lie, essentially, that is a better model. It's better for them, okay? You need to know the trade-offs. Lambdas are great at low volume because they scale to 0 and start very fast in generic scheme of thing. Try running a lot of Lambdas and then check your AWS bill, okay? This is going to be... You're going to be hit pretty heavily down if you have a lot of Lambda calls because, or even worse, that there is a massive amount of limit of how many Lambdas you can spawn on a single AWS account. I don't know if you know this.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow. How many can you have simultaneously spun up?
I think by default is 256. So at maximum, you can handle 256 concurrent requests on the default account. You need to raise it or something. And if you run out, okay, then they start getting queued. And in the same time, you can, wait a second, I can spawn 10,000 Lambdas. Okay, wait a second, I can run 10,000 concurrent requests on a single machine on Fargate, and it's significantly better performant. But very interesting, they don't ship scale to 0 on Fargate. Sorry, I'm just calling out the AWS bad market strategy to sabotage the industry, but that's to make more money, which is great for them. It's just...
Well, I have to wonder who's using Lambdas at scale at that point if the limit is that low for default accounts. I'm just curious, at true scale, is anyone using serverless for...
Well, there's lots of people that are using it at scale, but it's just, the AWS costs are something that have, a lot of people are concerned about, right? And talk about. Right. And that's why, competitors in various spaces like Cloudflare, like have different approaches to this. And that's one of the ways that these other players can compete with AWS is on cost. Yeah. But going back to Matteo's point about nobody wants to pay for performance, just kind of a different take on a different angle on it. Matteo and I, when we were both at Nearform, we'd go off and we'd do all kinds of performance consulting with Node. People would say, our stuff is slow, come help us fix it. And we'd go in and point out exactly why it's slow. Most of the time, they'd say, okay, cool, good that we understand that. Here, we'll just provision 10,000 more servers, to go, handle that load, because it's actually cheaper than going through and doing the work to fix the code to make it faster. I had a number of customers that were like that. So,
to be honest, it actually makes sense from a budget perspective. Okay, to be clear, if you need to do 2 months rewrite with all your team, okay, this is probably costing you maybe, I don't know, $500,000 in dollars, probably more if for international salaries. Okay, sorry if you're listening from
the Bay Area,
a country with salaries are low. But if you,
okay,
if you are in the Bay Area, it's probably a few millions. If you are in Europe, it's probably $500,000. But it's still a lot of money. Okay, overall, it's a lot of money for you for the company. Okay, spending a lot of money to do a rewrite or a performance optimization. And typically to gain, I don't know, a fraction of that, over time, they will recoup that money. Okay. It's not that they will save that money over time. It's not, that's of course true. But the problem is that there is no what matters is velocity and how much faster I can ship features. And that is where that logic loses, okay? You see, okay, I invest 3 months of development time to fix my performance bugs, and then I can, put my bill at 1 quarter, okay? However, at the meantime, I'm not shipping features. And if you're making those decisions, then you say, no, I cannot stop development. I need to ship those features, okay? And I really need to ship new features. I really need to move the business. And that's where the performance reasoning goes down, because it's actually, it's impossible for companies to invest in, to even care to some extent in performance and invest in making things faster.
I think this highlights, once again, the fact that all of these things are trade-offs, and it's going to depend on where your business is in the life cycle. If I'm an early stage startup, the amount of money that I'm going to save by investing in performance is essentially nil. If I'm a fairly vanilla web startup, the amount of performance that doesn't live in the cost of my database lookups, like any sort of optimization beyond optimizing my database schema and how I'm looking things up, is probably wasted money for most layers of scale. And then there are businesses that are at a high enough scale and doing enough computation where investing in performance pays off. And at that point, there's often a dedicated performance team. Maybe there's somebody who can maintain all of the and go in and do the fixes necessary to run a performance optimized runtime or do other things, right? Like, there is space in the world for investing in performance, and for most businesses, it's not the right choice. And so, like, this comes back to like the bun versus node trade-off. Like, if I'm running something that's super compute intensive, it may make sense for me to use bun and run with that and bite the productivity bullet of not being compatible and everything, and having to, every time I pull in a new library, make sure it's compatible and hunt things down. If I'm writing a vanilla web app, it probably doesn't.
I mean, for me, it's just that, like, Bun cannot market itself as production ready. I mean, that's just how I sit for a JavaScript ecosystem. Like, as in, it's not turnkey in the same way that you would have something like Node. And maybe that's too harsh. Maybe I'm being too harsh. And we have Jared's coming on to the show at some point in the next couple of weeks, so we'll get to hear from him. But anyways, yeah.
I would say that it doesn't even really matter too much. So it's like, let's just say Bun is going to increase in users. It's going to get production ready, whatever. Okay, awesome. Great to see it. Love it. But that's not really the question, right? So a lot of the people that are trying Bun out now, they're like, hey, this runs really fast on my project that I'm working on right now.
I hit my Hello World
on local benchmarks, or it makes my CLI run, the CLI tool run faster. And that's great. Fantastic. How does it scale on a server serving, 100 million requests over a day? How is it going to handle that load? How is the observability, when you add layers of security and observability and all these other things in it that you need for a true enterprise system? Like, how is it going to handle that? Will it be optimized for those type of workloads, right? Time and time again, when we'd go off and do these consulting jobs, it was not the runtime that was causing the bottleneck. It was how the application code was written, right? They're misusing promises. They're draining queues incorrectly. They have too much backend latency with their backend system because they're trying to JSON parse these massive, multi-megabyte files. Those are the things that you encounter in these real systems that all the performance bottlenecks tend to be. You don't even see the bottlenecks from Node itself, right? So like Dino and Bun, I mean, they could be in this space too, but until we start seeing benchmarks that show true enterprise scale and be able to compare apples to apples, do those performance optimizations actually move the needle enough to matter? That's when it would be like, okay, let's really pay attention to these.
Let me make an example. Okay, you have your React server-side rendered app that creates 100,000 nodes in your DOM. Okay, this is not a stupidly high number, to be honest. Okay, these is real numbers. And does it, is that thing faster than one or the other? Well, maybe. I just don't know. Okay, the problem is some of the stuff that we do that are there in the ecosystem, and why Node.js to some extent stopped having so much of an effort on performance itself, was because who cares? Okay, to be honest, if I'm running React server-side rendered application and I can only render, 100 pages a second because of the cost of React server-side rendering, or even less. Okay, I'm just making it nice. 100 is a good number of React server-side rendered.
I was like, wow, that's actually pretty good. So, yeah, no, I was like, I don't think
it's pretty good. Okay, no, consider on the same hardware, Node.js can run maybe 80,000 requests per second alone, and then you do React server-side render, you can do 100. Where is the bottleneck here? Okay.
Well, friends, I'm here with Eldad Fuchs, founder and CEO of Appright. Build fast, scale big, all in one place. Eldad, what's the backstory on your platform?
The main thing is basically I started Appright for myself. It started as a side project about 3 years ago when I was trying to solve my own challenges as an engineer. I'm coming with a background. I've been writing code for something like 20 years. And I've been building a lot of solo projects, and I've been leading teams as a team lead, as a CTO. And I always felt like things are way more complex than what they should be. At some point, I also discovered that my true passion is not really just writing code. It's actually seeing stuff coming to life. And code was just a mean to an end. And the end was to build product. And Appright's goal was to basically try and abstract all of this complexity, all of this knowledge that you needed to possess as a developer about security, building different APIs. You know, for me, it took, in one of my previous companies, it took us like 6 months to build an authentication API for a massive platform with over 1 million users. And that's something that, honestly, I don't ever want to do again. Not just because it was so complex, like who wants to build the same thing twice? So Appright was this platform that I imagined that I can just build it once and let everyone build on top of it, and build my own side projects on top of it, build my own startup on top of it, which actually my previous startup was built completely on top of Appright. Yeah, and today we have major services, major products that are just all inside the same platform. Like if you need authentication, Appright has it. If you need storage management, like manage your files and manage your image transformation, Appright has it covered. If you need a database to store and make sure that you can handle all the persistency needs of your app, you got it. You need serverless functions, you got it. And we're planning a lot of more surprises down the road and a lot more capabilities to this. What we envision is the cloud that is designed for developers.
Okay, the cloud that was built for developers, appright.io. Check them out. Build fast, scale big, all in one place. Appright is a backend platform for developing web, mobile, and Flutter applications. Get started at appright.io. Again, APPWRITE.io. And tell them JS Party sent you.
So one place I do see value is running tests in CI, because any gains you can get in terms of reducing the cycle time of developers making a change and making sure it doesn't break things does have benefits for productivity, does have a lot of other different things out. And those are also places where the observability features may not be as important, because once you see there's a bug, you can now go and run it locally or run something and get that observability a little better.
I have a couple of points to that thing. The first one is what tests. Ban does not run most test frameworks in Node right now.
That does come to the question, is it actually ready, right? So if it cannot run the frameworks, right? Well, and I don't know, right? Like I haven't done this. I did have.
I'm telling you, it's not. It does not. It does not run Jest. It does not run unpatched Jest. They have some patches to do that. It does not run tap.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure that's not a new library. I was like, okay, yes, so Jest with some mods, it'll work, sort of.
They can run Jest tests because they run them through their test runner, essentially.
And I'll just say this, Jared, if you're listening, these are feature requests. These aren't complaints.
Oh yeah, none of this
I would love these.
Yeah, none of this is a complaint. I mean, this is also just, it's about the code. It's not about personal. I think for me, it's more just, I'm just trying to address the hype that I see from JavaScript developers. Like, they're like, oh yeah, it's time to switch. I'm like, no, like, what time to switch? Like, you have to, is this going to support your stack? Yeah,
Well,
sure.
One place where this sort of performance is definitely helpful, and we've seen this with projects that have actually moved away from JavaScript and rewritten themselves in Rust, like build tooling and all that sorts of like CLI tools and stuff. And maybe that is a great use case for Bun, but are you going to be able to grow a company on that is another question.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the like company discussion yet, which I'm very curious to have with you all, because that is a very different like way that it's organized compared to Node. Yeah.
Before we go to that, relating to CLI tools, there is one aspect that I want to talk about.
Oh yeah, sure. I have like 3 things that I have queued up as well, so don't worry, we're not getting there anytime soon.
One is ban install, and that impressive ban install performance argument. Okay, it's the benchmarks that they do are not apple to apple comparison, as we call them in the benchmarking world. Okay, they are not benchmarking the same things. Okay, ban install does different trade-offs that trade user security for performance, and therefore is significantly faster and blows everybody out of the water. If you remove those safety checks, those guardrails from the others, the numbers are pretty similar. Okay, so it's a matter of guardrails. Like, do you want to run without guardrails? Yes, you can go way faster then, but you might fall down.
This reminds me of let's expect people to install their packages from a random web URL and assume it's going to stay happy that Dino did early on. And they discovered that wouldn't work, right? And I suspect Bun will also run into, as they start to get production users, this sort of thing of, wait, that doesn't actually work in the real world.
The different things it does differently are 2. The first one is it prefers offline by default, which means it's not going to check if there's a new version of your dependency when you install something.
So if there's been a security patch, it might miss it.
If there has been a security patch, you're not getting it. Sorry. Oh, by the way, I would prefer that, I would prefer that. I can see somebody making that trade-off, okay?
Yeah, there's a time and place for maybe that specific decision under a specific set of scenarios or whatever.
No, but my overall point here, and this is for Jared, if you're listening, hi. I've been voicing this back and forth on Twitter, so you probably have heard this before, also from even you and others. My point is, make the apple-to-apple comparisons and make sure to highlight the differences, okay, when you do public communications, okay? Mostly because you're basically comparing the default, but the defaults are significantly different in behavior, that you get so different numbers out of them. If PMPM, you tune it, you can tune PMPM more or less to be as with the same settings, with prefer offline and not doing audits when it's installed packages. If you do that, maybe it's 2 to 3 times slower, like a ban runs in 200 milliseconds versus PMPM runs in 800 milliseconds. Now we are talking about 600 milliseconds on something which is probably not that impactful. If the difference is from 200 milliseconds to 10 seconds, then, this is the difference of those extended checks that are done. And those are there for reasons. But if you're happy with that, just turn them on in your PMPM, in your NPM config, and hey, you can ride with that. For example, I disable security audits. There is NPM audit that does the checks every time you install. And I disable that because I run those checks in CI in all my projects, so I don't need them locally. And it's also too much noise. So I disable that check to have a faster install on my machine. It's my trade-off. I know what I'm doing. The default, by the way, though, is safe.
Isn't that potentially breaking, though, for someone who's coming from a Node project using NPM?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Because most projects in the NPM world tend to assume a caret dependency chain. So basically, what it means is I support only the latest combination of everything. Okay, I'm not support the combination of all the things. Okay, the random combination of all the things.
Yeah, the matrix. Yeah.
of the matrix of all the dependency on modules. I more or less support the latest and the greatest, because otherwise it's an exponential combinatory problem, and I don't give, it's impossible to support a wild combination of things. So yeah, that's the
question. So you mentioned that on PMPM, you can put some options in to get the same behavior, and you can configure that. And like the defaults are different. Is the reverse true? Can I tell Bun, hey, actually go and do the audits, actually, check remotely first?
I don't think so, but I'm not. Maybe they've added it recently. There was some back and forth discussion on.
Because I think it's one thing to say, hey, this is configurable, and we're going to have our default configuration be performance focused rather than security focused, but you can change that if that doesn't apply to your project. And it's another thing to say, hey, we're going to ignore the fact that you might want security, and we're just always going to be performance focused.
And that's going to be something that Bun or Oven as a company is going to have to balance. They're not an open source runtime. They are open source, but they're a community driven or a company driven product. They're going to have to make a product decision as they start to go off and try to to actually grow customers. Are they going to want security first, or are they going to want performance first? Performance first is a gamble, because it's not clear yet. They have to prove their market that that's what people want. And that's what they're going to prioritize over the security features. So.
Yeah, but I mean, for me though, even if they prioritize, like let's say they have some healthy compromise, or they figure out a way to have their cake and eat it too. There's things in Node like support for callbacks and promises, right? For example, if you're trying to read a file, you can do it through. And the reason, like I think Matteo alluded to some of this overhead earlier, right? You can't. It's similar to the web, right? Like when you're shipping new web standards, you don't want to break the web, right? So you don't want to break Node. It's too big of a project. You need to make sure you have some level of backwards compatibility as much as possible. And so for me, it's just like you said, to kind of productionize it from observability, security, eventually kind of having that like legacy of features, right? Being able to like shifting your API. Like there's just a natural kind of patina that develops on these projects, right? And that's kind of what you see with Node. It's like there's some things that are really quirky if you're coming to Node for the first time, and it's like, why are there 3 or 4 different ways to do the same thing? I'm so confused, And it's like, well, we just didn't want to break the project, So like that's a real
that legacy hurts us in a number of ways. So Node has this distinction between kind of the public API and the private API. And there's this whole bunch of stuff written in JavaScript, a whole bunch of stuff written in C++. And there's this boundary layer that we call, we have like, I don't even remember what we call it anymore. Anyway, there's this boundary layer that exists between there, process binding.
It's the place that James has X'd out of his brain. It's like, I don't go there anymore, Not without coffee or some wine,
Some whiskey actually sounds good.
Whiskey, yes.
Yeah.
This parts of the code base require whiskey.
Let's plan for one in Ireland.
Yes, exactly. Whiskey required. Anyways, we should rename the directory.
So that's got to be in the header on the file.
Yeah, exactly.
There is so much in Node that is whiskey required. So but this boundary layer.
I got to do more Node work.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's a great way to start drinking, everyone. Just anyways.
Early on in the project, that boundary layer was not hidden, right? And we've had so many modules published to NPM that kind of monkey patch around Node's JavaScript layer and go either directly to that C++ layer or a monkey patch and modify things in Node. Express is an example of this. Express actually, would monkey patch Node's HP implementation quite a bit. There's other modules that the entire ecosystem depends on that go directly to that C++ boundary layer. Now, in Node, we have tried repeatedly to hide that layer because doing so would allow us to make massive performance improvements throughout the entire code base. And there's been places where we have done this. And the decision was made a number of years ago that internal C++ layer is not public API. We can make changes to that are semver minor, semver patch, even if it breaks people. But even though we made that decision, we still treat it with kid gloves, and we're very, very careful not to break that unnecessarily because it will break the ecosystem. But if we could hide that boundary layer, from the ecosystem, we could make massive performance improvements throughout the entire project. It would benefit everybody.
By the way, we have made patches to modules to avoid to go, like the Node team has made patches to modules in the ecosystem to avoid touching those APIs so that we can finally change them. Let me add one more thing. Express, talking about one module that it's one of the offenders here. It's Express runs from node 0.8 up to node 21, which is coming out next month.
Are you serious? That's massive. That's incredible that like people could just upgrade seamlessly that many without upgrading their version of Express. I'm sure people are still running those versions of Express because, you know, the arc of the web is.
So the question now for a lot of people is, I know exactly how to make the HTTP layer faster, significantly faster. I've investigated it so much heavily. Okay, like Fastify, has almost no overhead compared to Node Core. So if I need to make Fastify faster, I need to improve the performance of Node Core, which was the target. Okay, you cannot beat that master. Now, the question is, in order to do that, it's breaking Express, essentially, and breaking other frameworks, other things, breaking stuff, mostly because there is a lot of overhead in a few places, and removing that overhead, which is not needed, by the way, it will kill perf. It will destroy some backward compatibility that of modules that are mocking patching our internals and we don't even know about. Well, we know that they exist.
Yeah, it's the problem that NPM has as well. I mean, Darcy Clark was on the show talking about like the manifest confusion bug that, that was kind of more recently codified. And I know this as well from my time there, but like basically he shared that like there's people depending on bugs. Like that's like in the CLI and registry bugs. Like there's people who've actually coded like whole solutions and they're relying on it. So changing that behavior, including like the manifest confusion, right? If the NPM just started patching that, like a whole bunch of stuff would just break for some people, like large and small companies. Yeah.
We've had real cases of this. So the glob module, it's been changed since, I believe, but a number of years ago, we decided that the way that symbolic links are resolved in Node before, like if you follow a path of them, whatever. It used to be this fairly expensive JavaScript algorithm. And there was a new method added to libuv that made it super, super fast, right? But it changed the characteristics of how that worked. The glob module, right, had this logic that depended on the old Node algorithm to throw an error at a particular point. Like, so if the glob ended up recursing, through symbolic links, it would basically end up, you could set it up so it would recurse infinitely, right? The operating systems, depending on whether you're on Windows or Linux, would throw an error at a different point if that path got too long, right? The glob module was actually depending on that error being thrown to know when to stop, when to exit out that loop. When we switched to the libuv method, that broke. And this glob module that everyone in the ecosystem depended on because it was used by NPM itself, and a bunch of others, suddenly stopped working correctly. And this is a clear example of a behavior that, ideally you wouldn't depend on an error being thrown at a particular point, right? Especially when that differs from one operating system to the next. But the code was still written to, account for that. Right. And trying to fix the performance, and it was a massive performance improvement, broke everybody.
Yeah. Like once your software is like out in the wild and you've shipped it and you have wide adoption, like, yeah, it's really hard to kind of walk back and claw back certain things. And it's amazing just like how, it's just, and that's just the cost of adoption, for better or worse. It's the gravity of adoption. I don't know. It's like, I'm trying to make changes, right? But it's so hard. And so can you, we've kind of talked about this quite a bit now. And James, I really loved your analogy around like optimizing for performance versus kind of production readiness and standard, following standards. Like that was just really great, that push pull. And of course, like when you're a new project with like I can't say no real production users, right? But like very few, you can thrash, you can change your API 600 times, you can break things. Like it's like, there'll be people angry, but there's such a small group, like who cares, right? And so I'm like curious, like, can you just kind of codify for people so we can kind of move on from this topic? Breaking Node, like what would that even be like? Because people, whether you have a Node backend or not, like if you're using modern JavaScript tooling, you're using Node, right? So it's everywhere. It's in your CIs, it's in all the things, all the places. What is breaking Node? Like, what does that look like? Like a shutdown for the internet? Like, please explain to me, like what kind of a scale are we talking about?
No, it becomes like a Python 2, Python 3.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Where you'll basically have this divide, a line drawn where everything from Node, let's say we do it in Node 22, everything before Node 22 just continues to run there, but eventually you'll run out of new security patches and new security fixes, and like eventually that will just kind of naturally stop being supported. And then everything after Node 22 or whatever is kind of this new paradigm where you have to do it this new way. So that means some percentage, and potentially huge percentage.
There'll be some attrition or people who, yeah.
But there'll be this huge percentage of things that are NPM now that just won't work going forward.
Right.
Because we know people do not update their dependencies, right? So it's like they're not going to go back and fix those things. It just won't work on the new platform. Yeah,
so then we'll just like leave a whole generation of projects and people and whatever behind, essentially, right? Matteo, like, just regarding this, I'm surprised that it hasn't come up yet, but this decision to use Zig, right? Like, I feel like this really affects people's ability to contribute. I mean, we see that even with ESBuild. Like, if you look at the contributor list of ESBuild, it's still very, very low, right? Written primarily, I think does
Zig lower it more than C++?
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to understand. Like, I didn't even know Zig was a thing. I'm like, was I like living under a tree or something? Like, what is Zig? I didn't even know Zig was a thing until. How do we feel about Zig?
Okay, let me clarify. So Zig is a significant improvement over C++.
Did you say dig or Zig?
Zig. Sorry, Zig is a significant improvement over C++.
Okay.
To be honest, even C is a significant improvement over C++ in my point of view. So the bar is pretty low.
Yes.
Okay. To be honest, I prefer writing C. I love C code. C is beautiful. Okay. C++ gives me a headache half of the time because I don't know what exactly I'm calling. So it's really, is this a method? Is this a function? What is this happening here? It has so much overloads, but if you look it in with the wrong eye, it just explodes in top of your face. So everything is better than C++ at this point. So in that, the project has an advantage. Okay, now looking at Node as most of its implementation, it's actually in JavaScript, it's not in C++. Okay, the C++ part of Node are very tiny. Okay. And look, very recently, Node even shipped some WASM internally because it's actually faster to use WASM than using C++ for certain things, which is even bananas if you consider it. Okay, but it's actually great. Okay, to be honest. So I just wanted to go over that. Now, there is one thing: is who are your target contributors? Okay, and who are your users? And you want essentially to have users that can contribute to the runtime, and having the primary trying to write as much of the project in the language, in the target language. It's essentially called self-hosting to some extent. Okay, it's why I think Rust is written in Rust or something like that. Okay, there is this kind of thing, and it's actually very important. And so because it lowers the barrier of contributors so that users can be converted into maintainers.
This, by the way, is a key difference between Node and commercial runtimes like Dino and Bun and Workers and those kind of things, which those are not actively going to go out and seek to convert the user base into a contributor base. The user base and contributor base are very different in those other runtimes.
This is the key difference between the end users and the commercial projects, even commercial open source, okay, let's call it commercial open source, versus community-based open source, okay? In community-based open source, the end goal is increase the maintainers base, okay? Your key target, your key metrics is increasing the maintainers base, okay? If the maintainer numbers goes down, the project dies. So that's what you need to achieve, okay? If you have a huge pile of VC money, okay, you can essentially afford to, who cares? Okay, I'm hiring people. And by the way, it's not necessarily bad. It's just a different way of things. I'm not saying one camp or the other. You probably, all of us have used some React. React is the key example of commercial project, okay, in that formal sense.
Company backed. Yeah, it's financially backed. Yeah. And I love that term, by the way, commercial open source. It sounds so much better than just VC backed or has money or whatever. It's a more inclusive term, so I'm going to use that from now on. And I'm eager to discuss that with all of you next. But I do want to just ask about maintainers and how is Node doing as a project right now, and has that whole maintainer sustainability kind of working, because no one's really paid to work on Node, right? There's a lot of people working at companies.
There's a handful.
No, you tell me.
There's a very limited handful, I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 that are actively paid just to work on Node. And that's their primary job. I've lost track of the exact number, but it's very, very small. There are people who, as part of their job, if they're using Node, they're okay, work with Node, open pull requests, do reviews and that kind of thing. But that's different than being paid to work on it. It's you're getting, Node is just part of your job, right? And helping support it is just part of your job, and you're there just to help do it. And then we have people that are just I'm just doing this in my spare time. I get paid to do something else, but I'm doing this because I think it's fun or useful and that kind of thing. So there's really those three categories. It's paid full time to work on it, paid because I work on it, or I work on it for fun.
Interesting. And so, and if people wanted to start contributing to Node, where would they start? Is there a Sherpa for them? Is there a person or a community or something? And I also personally, I have an announcement to make after this, by the way, which is related to Node, but
There is a website. It's called Node to Do.
Node to Do. Okay. So Node to Do, that's the place to start. nodetodo.org.
Yeah. And that shows more or less the basic steps to get things up and running, okay? And the links to the things that you need to do to set up your development environment, which is the starting point to get things started. And that is the gist of it. Now, then if you need help if you need mentoring in how to fix an issue or doing some stuff, you need to reach out to some of the collaborators. And typically they are very passionate about one aspect or another of the code base. Therefore, they will get you up to speed and up and running in essentially no time or very quickly if you are willing. Okay, it's as all these large projects is not for the faint of heart. It's not easy to some extent. There is most of the time contributing to a large open source project requires commitment. Okay, and I'm not saying it lightly, okay, but it requires commitment. Typically, we want the code to be right, and therefore there is long iterations on pull requests. Even stuff that looks trivial to some extent can take a long time, okay? Yeah, I also have an announcement to make, so hopefully.
You have an announcement to make? I have an announcement to make too. Okay, well, so real quick, so we'll put links in the show notes to all the things. And then there's Node is supported by a foundation. It used to be called Node Foundation, rebranded to OpenJS Foundation because it's an umbrella. There was the JavaScript, I don't know. What was the old one called? The old JavaScript Foundation that was not Node. What was it called?
There was JavaScript Foundation and Node Foundation, and they merged into OpenJS.
Yeah, thank you.
JS Foundation.
Yeah, there was JS Foundation and Node.js Foundation. Can't use the word JavaScript is a trademark of Oracle. So look, I have no problems in telling and say this is that. Okay.
Yeah, we're not even, well, whatever. So anyway, so they joined OpenJS. Everything's run under the OpenJS Foundation, and OpenJS hosts like contributor days where they help actually fly in maintainers to get together. Like, I don't know, do you always do it like quarterly or biannually? Like biannually. There was one this week, but neither James or myself went. Okay. So, and then is there going to be one with the Node Conf VU, or is it tied to like...
I think just a bunch of collaborators shows up at
an informal one, yeah,
an informal one. So there was. It's also because the foundation, the travel fund for the foundation has run out of money, so there is no money for that, for flying more people around the world. Oh gosh. Well, anyways, so that's exciting. And my announcement is that, for a long time, people poked me about like, oh, you should join the Node.js community committee, which is like lovingly called ComCom. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but I'm like now actually really interested in like contributing some of my time every week towards Node. And so if the community committee is still a thing, I think I would like to join that and help. So I ran a community for many years in the Boston area. So I was doing like in-person meetups and stuff like that. So I didn't have time to do that plus all the other things. So I'm redirecting some of that energy now. So that's my announcement. What's your announcement, Matteo? Your first thing should be congratulations, Amal. We're so lucky to have you. But look, Amal, it's congratulations. So the ComCom is not a thing anymore.
Oh no! I was like,
congratulations, Amal. You have
joined the non-existent. I don't even know. I want to help. I know I can join something, whatever that is.
But it's not true. There is an informal. Well, there is a marketing committee at the OpenJS Foundation that runs. And there is so much need of more people to advocate for Node and be essentially more of a DevRel for Node type of thing.
Yeah, I could do DevRel stuff for Node.
And that is, and shows people that Node is not that same thing, that mean tutorial that somebody wrote in 2014 that's full of bad advice that everybody keeps following as for today. I'm so... that tutorial creates so many production outages that, look, those were bad decision at the time and bad decision now, even worse decision now to follow that same tutorial in 2014.
I mean, it's funny. Matteo and I can, like on various consulting or talking to folks, it's gotten to the point where we can see what mistakes they're making and we know exactly which sources that they pulled those from.
Did you read this blog post? No. Yeah, that's so funny. Well, no, I'm happy to write unit tests too. I'd love to do code contributions, but I'm more interested in like community building and like helping do that stuff. But happy to write unit tests or dig out into, would love to.
Oh, if you want to write unit tests, please come. I can throw you a lot of unit tests to write.
Yeah, please.
If you want to have some fun,
reach out to you after this.
And if you're listening to this, it sounds like your answer to how do I get involved in Node is you can ask Matteo and he'll give you unit tests, right?
Oh, I can give you... Look, let me put it another way. At this point in time, there are 1,400 open issues in Node. So if we even have a role called it's the triager, that it allows us to clean those up, okay? Like, I don't think there is 1,400 bugs, okay? There is just a mountain.
I could help with triaging too. So I'm available to help, basically. I'm committing to this. So, but that being said, the reason why I brought up this whole contribution thing is because we're going into October. We have Hacktober coming up, so and Node is an important project. So consider Node in your Hacktober PRs.
Just if you're going to be involved with Hacktober, please do it responsibly.
Yes, whiskey after contribution, not before, and try to reduce the number of files requiring whiskey before drinking or before coding, all those different things.
Also, all the docs are fine and they don't need to be updated or fixed.
Oh, God. Yes.
Oh, Hacktober. I feel like Hacktober has gone wrong in so many ways.
Yeah,
but
it is.
Before we close this out, I think it's worth talking about the money question because we started spinning around this a little bit. And I think there's a few different angles that we could take this, right? So one angle is actually, Matteo, you mentioned Oracle, right? Like any sort of corporate owned project has the vulnerability of being acquired by a malevolent entity. Thinking Java, as an example, was built out by Sun. They own all the trademarks. They own this, that, the other. Sun is long since dead. Oracle scooped them up and has built so much litigation around owning Java and caused so many problems for Android and other different things, right? So there's like that whole piece of it. Then there's just the incentives question, right? So Oven as a company is venture backed. They have no source of revenue. They are not, they need to keep making money in some form, which means their attention is going to be split, and they're going to be tempted to do things like Dino has done with Key Value Store of trying to build add-ons into the runtime that just happen to opt you into a paid service somewhere rather than being free and open. The incentives are there. They may be the purest of hearts. Incentives hurt everyone. And then the final thing is like, what happens when the money runs out? I think this happened to Meteor and a couple of other these projects that raised a whole bunch of money to build some sort of community open source project. The money runs out and the project just kind of dies. So I'm curious which, if any of these, you all see as challenges for the runtime competitors that we have here, which I think both Dino and Bun are VC backed, relatively small. So it's not like React, which is like, okay, this is big company, doing this as a side. Dino has raised 21 million. Bun is 7. They have maybe a couple years of runway. I don't know how big their teams are, but like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, it's all concern. It's all a possibility, and it's just not the small ones, right? You look at other runtimes like like Workers. I mean, it's backed by a massive company, but those companies have shareholders. They have fiduciary responsibilities. They have things that aren't just how fast the code goes that they have to consider. And any time that you have that basis, you run into the potential with issues. Look at Node as an example. Node's early history with Joyent and the kind of the commercial interest there, and it ran up to this tug of war between the community wants to do this, the company wants to do this other thing, and those are diametrically opposed goals. And it can be a death sentence for the project. It doesn't matter if it's a JavaScript runtime that goes really fast. It could be any open source project. It has the same potential problem of this, this conflict between what the community wants and what the company wants. Now, there are, I absolutely believe in, Dino and Bun as a company, their ability to overcome these problems. Like, all of these companies, they have the ability to deal with this and balance it out and drive something that is super successful, right? But it's going to be on them, and this is going to be their number one challenge, is what is the right balance between community and commercial? Are you going to let your selfish community, commercial interests, right?
Your selfish community, was that a Freudian slip?
Commercial interests.
No, let's be honest. Communities are selfish too.
They are.
Everybody can be selfish. Equal opportunity selfishness.
They're selfish with different motives.
Yes.
They're different, with different reasons. But are you going to allow that selfish commercial interest? And we have to be honest, it is absolutely selfish, for many reasons, and that's not a bad thing. Are you going to allow those to outbalance your community interests and what your users are wanting, what they're asking for? Because let's be honest, the community wants features they're not willing to pay for, right? And you have to balance those out.
I could not agree with you more. And in listening to you say that, one of the things I think that is a kind of an appeal for folks, especially from a commercial side, right? Like, I'm a startup and I'm like, oh, maybe I want to use something like Bun or Deno. Like the kind of all-in-one-ness of it is very tempting, right? Especially for startups that are looking for more kind of turnkey, like up and starts, like being able to kind of get a bunch of stuff with the ecosystem and not have to kind of like choose your own adventure, like how Node does, is tempting. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on all the points that you raised. And I mean, money keeps creeping into open source.
And I want to make a point. I mean, this is kind of a tangent here, but Node 100% needs to look at what's happening in Bun and Dino and learn what people want. Right? If people look at Bun and say, hey, I'm willing to pay for this integrated suite of tools in the runtime so I don't have to go off and piecemeal everything together, and I want to pay for those things, then Node should look at that and say, crap, we got it wrong. We need to start doing this also. We need to start meeting users where they want to go. And if there's one criticism I can make with Node, going back years, is that they've not been good at this part of learning from those mistakes and correcting their path.
From my point of view, the biggest mistake there was not adding a test runner sooner. I don't know if you have been checking out the Node test runner.
It's pretty good.
It's impressively and phenomenally fast. Okay. And essentially they end up like we had to implement that and add that to core because, the test runners out there were so different from what the Node core team considered a good test runner for Node that we actually had to write our own. Like it was, at some point, it was, if you need to beat, so many problems with the most popular ones, like Jest, you should not be using Jest to test Node.js. Sorry, if you're watching and you're using it every day. You cannot test your app 100%. So whatever it tells you, it's a lie. And I'm so sorry there's an issue. And I'm so sorry about this. You can configure it to be more or less better, but then you lose a lot of the benefits of it. So at this point, you might as well use something else. Mocha is a great framework but again, it's the Node folks wanted something that can run each process separately and not everything together. I don't know. So
yeah,
and essentially we ended up having to write our own because there was no room left. Okay, you cannot spawn a new test runner and expect it to win a lot of users out of the blue. And so
what was the pushback on that, Matteo? Like, was it just like you weren't able to get consensus, or was it just not an initiative? Or?
No, when it came up, everybody was okay with it.
Yeah, it was surprising. It was surprising when people were like, "Hey, let's add a test runner." I think everyone had gotten to the point. They're like, "Okay." A couple of years back, right? Like I'm not gonna go into details and stuff, but I was at a conference once and I had a couple other Node Core contributors like actually yelling and screaming at me for suggesting that we add new features to the runtime. And I'm so happy that we've gotten way beyond that point where it's like, okay, no, we can actually talk about adding new things and it's done. But I was flat out told in 2015, Node was done. It didn't need anything else. And think about all the new things that have been added to the runtime since.
That reminds me of my friend who went to work for Google years back, and his mother asked, "Well, why work for Google? It already works."
Oh, I love that! Wow. Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
Moms are the best. Anyways, so y'all, this is like the world's longest show, and thank you to our listeners for sticking with us. I just.
Oh, but I have not told the announcement.
Oh wait, yeah, I was gonna just say, like, did I miss that? Okay, do you want to? Because go ahead with your announcement, and then we have listener questions, and then we're gonna close. Okay.
One of the most requested feature in Node.js.
Should I drum roll?
Yeah. Guess what it is? Okay. One of the most and oldest open. It's an issue that was open in 2018. It was opened by Miles, by the way. It has 137 plus ones, and we closed multiple versions of that same thing. It's issue 19,000, something like that. We are issue like 40,000 something at this point. And it's very old. And we will probably be able to close this issue in Node 21 if things line up. Node.js is finally shipping WebSocket.
What? Woohoo! Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, show title right there. Lead with that.
We just flip it. Yeah.
Bury the lead there.
Missy Elliott song. We're gonna have to reverse this whole podcast.
So it's this Easter egg. Like this is the discussion on bun, and then you need to. But there is for the people watching, they need to watch till the end or just jump.
Oh yeah, this is what you get for sticking it out.
Special announcement.
This is what you get for sticking out. This like
Jared's gonna put a fun chapter title on it, like announcement.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a very good. It's happening. It's the implementation is there. It passes. It's WPT. It's part of Undici, so you can already test it. Undici has its own spec compliant WebSocket implementation now, and you can test it. And hopefully, Node 11 we will add it as a global. Essentially, that's the current plan, at least.
I cannot wait to test it out, and that's so exciting. Do you have like a rough timeline for when that will be downloadable.
No, it's the Node 11 is coming out October.
Or 22, 21.
No, 2020,
21,
not 21, not 11.
You're going back years.
I was like,
Yeah,
I was like, wait, Node 11.
No, Node 21 is coming out at the end of October.
It's coming out in October, so it's coming out soon. Wow. Well. That's exciting.
It's it will be the PR probably will be open next week to add it. So if everything
You can
goes,
play with it now with Undici.
you can already test it out in Undici. It's already there. You can install, and there is the WebSocket API, and you can test it, verify it at box. It will be experimental at the beginning, as all things. Okay. But also very soon Fetch will become stable. So Node, the Fetch implementation inside Node will be marked as stable in very soon.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to have you guys back on at some point to kind of talk about all the fun APIs that are maturing and or all that stuff. But that's exciting. So we have some questions from our listeners. I just want to make sure we kind of get through them. They posted them in our Slack channel. If you're not in our Slack channel, what are you waiting for? Join our Slack channel. So Eric Clemens, who I basically bullied him into asking these questions. He's a friend of mine, and I actually invited him to kind of join the show with us today, just as a fun commentator, and he wasn't able to make it. So I was like, okay, well, you need to give me questions then. And so he asked, do you see any similarities to the IOJS split with Bun or Deno? And the other question he had, which we've kind of talked about this a bit, was, do you think Bun's drop-in replacement marketing will be a key driver compared to Deno?
So I'll take the IOJS part. No, but
okay, yeah, we'll leave the drop-in thing for Matteo. It's spicy.
So right now there's no parallels at all. Right, and Dino and Bun are doing a fantastic job of listening to their user base, which is where I think Node early on fell down. Like they started letting this commercial interest overshadow the community voice, and I'm not seeing that pattern yet in either Dino or Bun. But there's always that risk, right? And so the one caution that I would give to friends at Dino and Oven is be very careful about how you're engaging with the community. Do not forget that they have a voice in what you're doing, that they're the ones that are going to be out evangelizing, right? Doing that dev role. They're the ones that are going to be going out and doing conference talks and going out and really driving your platform forward. It doesn't matter how much money you put into your own marketing. It's that community around it that you really need to work with and embrace. And if you ever move away from that, if you ever let that relationship spoil, right, then you're going to run into IOJS scale problems. Now it'll look completely different, right? But that's when you start having that issue. So, that relationship with the community is your most valuable asset as you are trying to drive this thing forward. So you have to protect it, nurture it, maintain it.
I'll take the second question then. And do you think Bun's drop-in replacement marketing will be a key driver compared to Dino? So, okay, if you make a marketing statement, you need to, then you will be called to deliver on that marketing statement. Okay? This is the generic, the TLDR. It's the reality will it depends. It's if they can. The key question for Bun is will they be able to deliver with all of what the community needs? Okay, right now it does not implement all things that Node implements. Okay, it's not a complete replacement. It's quacks like Node sometimes. Okay, but it's not Node. So, because of the stuff that we had before, there is exposed internals, there is certain things it's very hard to make it compatible. Now, let's take a look. So Bun implemented everything from scratch, typically using Zig. Dino did a completely different approach in writing their own Node.js compatibility layer. Dino at the beginning came out with this big fanfare of we are better than Node, 10 mistakes, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I just saw it, cutting it short. And then they said Node is wrong. It's bad model for governance. This is their word, more or less. And they are slow because of they are consensus based. Okay, making decisions, and they cannot evolve the project. And then they shipped a full blown compatibility layer. It's an amazing engineering feat, to be honest. Really stunned by the people that pulled it off. Luca Casonato in Primis, which is a great guy, and all the things, okay? And basically, they forked Node. Like they took the most of the JavaScript layer from Node and adapted it for Dino internals. So the Node compatibility layer of Dino is literally Node.js code, including bugs, okay? Which means that they're
Sorry, that's so funny.
But that's what we talked about. So again, it's to some extent, I think for certain cases, Dino, it's more of a Node drop-in replacement than Bun at this point in time. Okay, and I have claims to that. Like I can point to areas where it actually is because it's based on V8, because it had this approach for compatibility, which is great. So all of these combined, and in fact they lose performance. They were significantly faster than Node, but they lose a little bit of performance with this compatibility layer, but don't care because they need the compatibility with the rest of the market. So from my point of view, it's you need to deliver on your key marketing. You need to deliver on those messages, okay? It's the fact that I receive an issue every day on one of my modules telling me it doesn't work on Bun. Really, this is my life right now. It's a problem, okay? It's what it is. So
yeah.
Cool.
So we have one more listener. Well said, by the way, Matteo. And you know, that was like medium spicy. So good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have one more listener, Kyle Beard. KBall's gonna do the honors for Kyle's question. Who had a question?
Yeah. So Kyle asks two questions that are related. The first one I think we've covered to a fair amount, but says, has the scope of support and lifetime of the project positioned Node to be slower to iterate in terms of performance enhancements, which I think we've already answered. Yes, kind of. But the follow-up question to that he has is there any way to keep pace, which I think would be interesting to dig into. And then there's also a secondary question around kind of does splintering and usage hurt the community, or does it help because you have this kind of lifting of all boats to people trying different things and iterating differently?
I'll take the first part of this one too. So, like, is there any way to keep pace? I would flip that. Is there a reason to keep pace? More importantly, that we have these options on the table. It's more important that they behave in consistent ways than it is for them to perform in consistent ways. Like, it's okay for one runtime to be faster at something than another one, as long as developers can use those reliably in a consistent way, right? There shouldn't be 3 different ways of parsing a URL, for instance. There should be one way of parsing a URL, and if one runtime is faster at doing that than others, cool. So I think, going to that, making sure that the APIs are consistent, making sure that they're executing things in a consistent way, that we're not seeing these massive differences in timing when a promise queue is drained, or, differences in like one implementation handles streams with a particular timing and the other one completely breaks, where, because what happens then is people, when they write code to run on any of these, they either need to write it to run on one, or they have to write all of these workarounds to get it to work on all of them, right? That's way more important to get right than making it just as fast as something else. And I think that is the biggest risk here. The fact that Bun is so much faster, cool. The fact that it may not implement something like this drop-in Node API layer, whatever, that may not work quite right, that is a bigger problem. And that's what we need to be putting our focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, well said, y'all. And I cannot state this enough. Like, this was a technical critique of I think the project, but also just general critique of like the community's reaction. We're really excited. I'm excited to see this innovation in the community. I'm also really excited to hear potentially, maybe Jared will be listening to this. He's going to be interviewed on the show. I think Jared's interviewing him in a week. So hopefully we'll get a chance to, hear from him a bit more directly soon. So this will be a nice kind of juxtaposition. So I just want to say thank you both so much for coming on the show, James and Matteo, and KBall and Chris. Matteo and James, where can folks connect with you on the internet?
Oh, I'm on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. I'm on Faucet. Just look for J.A. Snell. I'm pretty much J.A. Snell everywhere. So
you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever, Matteo Collina. or you can find me at nodeland.dev, and there is a bunch of all my links, all my open source, all the stuff that I do.
Yeah, are you still doing your newsletter?
I've reduced a little bit the pace because I want to write a little bit long form stuff. I wrote a very spicy take on Bun that I published a few weeks back when it came out, essentially, explaining what we talked in an extensive form in this podcast. So I don't know if I thought you read the piece before the article. You were so much spot on all the questions. So I have.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, really? Oh, no, I didn't read it. We're mentally in sync, Matteo. This is like the greatest honor of like my professional careers. Yeah, no, I have not, and now I will. So everyone, it's been an amazing show. It's been a long show. It's been an educational show. Thank you both so much for everything that you do, for all your contributions, for all the things. We love you both. You can catch both of them at NodeConf EU, which is happening in November. You can also catch me there because I've officially committed to going to this thing. So I'll be there as well. And yeah, have a lovely rest of your day, night, evening, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Next up on the pod is the man of the hour. Yes, I'm speaking with Jared Sumner from Bun, all about Bun, of course. What did you expect me to say? What were you thinking? What do you want me to talk to him about? Why do you think he's coming on the pod? What did you expect, a baking show? That'd be ridiculous. Fun, of course. And a reminder, our 300th episode is coming real soon, and we need your help to make it extra special. Learn how and earn yourself a free JS Party t-shirt at jsparty.fm/300. Thanks once again to our partners, Fastly.com, Fly.io, and Typesense.org, and to Breakmaster Cylinder for being our beat freak in residence. That's our show for now, but come back and party with us again next week.